Okay, so I got 4:02. Let's call to order the joint meeting of the Ways and Means and Economic Development Committees. Please note that today is being transmitted via live stream. The public can go to the Orange County website, www.orangecountygov.com, click on the legislature and locate today's meeting in the calendar. Would remind everyone to please silence your phones, tablets, or other electronic devices. And be mindful that the microphone here is very sensitive so that other cross conversations could be recorded and reviewed. At this time, would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless you. All right. And as chairman, I'm going to rule that anybody who's in a jacket can take it off because it is extremely hot in here. Okay, so Kelly, roll call, please.
Anastakis, Brescia.
Here.
Haney.
Here.
Hines.
Here.
O'Donnell.
Here.
Here.
Hotel. Here. Beck.
Here.
President Williams.
All right, that's good.
Enoch.
O'Donnell.
Here again.
Ramos. Here. Skevich.
Here.
Sassy. Sierra. Stiganga. Sutherland. And Menudo.
Here.
For President, 4 absent.
Okay, so we can proceed. Okay, so we're here today for, first up is O'Connor Davies, the review of the proposed Orange County Community College budget for 2022 to 2023. And they have a presentation as well as a handout, I believe. You have a...
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nicholas DeSantis. I'm a partner with the firm of PKF O'Connor Davies, and with me on my left is my partner, Chris Koch, also a partner, and conducted the field work in the review of the community college proposed budget. Each of you has a spiral bound book, which is the review of the 22-23 proposed budget. And if I may just take you to the table of contents.
It's also up on the board.
Here, and we have it up on the board. That's the audit report. That's not the column. If you look at the table of contents, you'll see that you've engaged us to look over the proposed budget from a mathematical point of view, not from a policy point of view, and we fulfill that responsibility. If you look at the table of contents, you'll see that we did an analysis of summary of the proposed budget, tuition, federal aid, state aid, other revenues, and at the end of the revenue section, we summarize our findings.
Nick, can I stop for 1 second? Can you please make sure when you're doing something up there that you can refer to the page
Sure.
and where to look on the page so that you can follow in their books?
Correct. So right now, we're looking at the table of contents. Table of contents is right there. It's the second page right after the heading page in the book, table of contents. So as I indicated, we've summarized all the revenues at the end of the section and provided you with our findings on the revenue side. And then we've also similarly done the same on the expense side of the budget, personal services, capital equipment, contractual services, employee benefits, and then we did a summary. We've also summarized the net position of the college based upon a government reporting basis of the county. We've summarized our findings, and we've also provided a narrative in the conclusion section. In the exhibit section, on page 44, we did a comparison between the current budget versus our projection for the 21-22 academic year. On page 45, we did a comparison between the administration for the college versus our projection for 21-22. Page 46, we did a comparison between the adopted budget and the proposed budget and the variances. Page 47, we did a comparison between the proposed 22-23 budget and the actual expenses and revenues for 21-22. And finally, on Exhibit 5, page 48, we did a comparison between the 22-23 proposed budget and our projection. If we turn to the top of page 2 of the spiral bound book, I just want to point out to the committee members that the budget that's being proposed for the 22-23 academic year comprises of about 20% revenues from the state, 31% from the county, a little less than 10% from federal sources, and almost 39% from student tuition fees and other sources. At the bottom of the page, page 2, the 22-23 budget as proposed by the trustees. They're requesting an increase of $880,000 in the sponsor contribution, the sponsor being the county, in the amount of $19.93 million. State aid is proposed in the budget at $2,997 for a full-time equivalent student. At the top of page 3 of the report, full-time tuition is increasing by $168 for the 21-22 academic year, $5,544 for the 22-23 academic year. In the middle of the page, third paragraph, as you recall, the old formula of 1/3 tuition, 1/3 state aid, 1/3 county contribution, obviously is not in play. We've given you those percentages from the beginning. At the bottom of page 3, just as a refresher, the colleges received grant awards of about $22.5 million from 3 different federal programs, and they're described on the bottom of page 3. And at the top of page 4, the college is using approximately $7 million of federal aid in the proposed budget. Approximately $5 million is budgeted for operational expenses, and the balance of $2.5 million is being used for other than for expenses. Actually, if I can read from the president's message, it reads as follows in his budget book, not in our book, but in his book. Approximately $3.6 million of the total is supporting the FY 22-23 operational budget. The remaining $2.6 million is available to support the budget in the event enrollment does not meet the projected level in FY 22-23. Should enrollment targets be met, the college hopes to add that $2.6 million to the fund balance in order to support the FY 23-24 budget. With that said, I'm going to turn over our analysis of the college budget to Chris. And our focus obviously is going to be on the revenue side, because we'll see that's where most of our findings are. Chris?
Sure. I mean, this is mine on a quarter of a page at a time. There we go.
What page you on, Chris?
Again, yes, I'm pleased with the pages.
This would be on page 11 in the book. What I described though will be on the previous pages. So as we talk about it, this is the summary for you to look at. As Nick indicated in the back are some of our exhibits. The first exhibit 2 is a comparison of the community college's projection for 21-22 and our projection for 21-22. Typically, when we go through this, I kind of point out the differences that we had. But this year, the college is projecting a $50,000 surplus for 21-22. We're projecting $120,000 surplus. So I don't think I really have to describe the differences between our projection and theirs. They're very close. So all my analysis will be on the 22-23 budget here, which is the budget that you're looking at. So the first item on the revenue side is your full-time tuition. And again, the college has faced challenges with their enrollment figures. When you look at the enrollment figures, and I'll tell you what page they're on, so you can follow along. Enrollment figures are on page 9 in the book. So when the college put their budget together, they estimated about 1,553 full-time equivalent students, which is an amount similar to what they're experiencing in the current academic year. We looked at it from a historical point of view, and all community colleges are facing a challenge trying to get enrollment figures to stop declining. The decline's been fairly consistent over the last 8 to 9 years. So what we did when we looked at ours, we continued with this minor decline in FTEs. So our projection shows that you're gonna have 100 less students than the college's projection based on historical data. And that amounts to about $520,000. One of the things we did to validate the projection and to make sure we understood it was we looked at the enrollment in the surrounding 5 community colleges, and all of them over the last period of years have also shown a similar decline to what Orange Community College is showing. You're not out of the norm. If you were to chart them in together, probably a difference of 1 or 2% between you and any other college. So all the surrounding colleges are facing the same squeeze on the number of students to come in. So if you multiply that $5,000 tuition times the 100 FTE difference, you come up with our $520,000 variance.
If you look at the last chart, if you look at the actual chart, right, the right-hand column, there's a decrease over the past 9 years from 3,064 to 1,666. That's a 46% less enrollment as FTEs, full-time equivalent students.
And I think if you went back in history and you chart the enrollment, you'll notice that during tough economic times, during a recession, community colleges experience more students because it's a lot more efficient. It's cost effective to send your student to a 2-year college than a 4-year college. So your enrollment typically goes up in the good years and unfortunately declines as the economy gets better. People can afford the more expensive 4-year private schools. The next area we looked at was your part-time tuition. And again, based on a similar decline in usage from 21 to 22, we're showing a $340,000 drop. Again, as students stop going full-time, they go to part-time typically, but in this case, again, your part-time tuition and your FTEs are dropping. Same with your summer, winter, not as drastic. You have to remember some of your programs in winter were still affected by COVID. So we showed a little less revenue in the past years, and we don't see the decline in changing. And out-of-state tuition is just based on the number of students from out-of-state that registered. I think you only have a neighborhood of 60 students from out-of-state that come to college. No big impact there. So 950,000 is the bulk of the variance that you'll see on revenue. The next area that we looked at is state aid. And again, state aid, the state did increase over the past couple of years, the state did increase the amount that they were giving you per student. This year, they left it flat with last year, so no increase from the state. But again, it's driven by the number of students enrolled in college.
It's on page 13. There's a chart on the bottom of the page.
So again, as the number of FTEs drop, your state aid drops in relation to your overall revenue scheme. So again, you're going to see a constant theme throughout all the findings in its enrollment. If you can get more students to enroll, you'll see every category of revenue improve.
What we attempted to do as a separate handout, we gave you this separate chart. It's not going to be up on the screen. But if you notice on this chart, you have the state aid in the gold bar. And you see that that's been relatively constant. It matches the numbers on page 13 of the spiral book. The tuition increases, or the tuition is the blue bar. And the red line is the FTEs. So I know there's always been discussions regarding the amount of state aid that the college received and the disappointment, so to speak, that the county has realized in state aid. But in part, that's due because of the declining enrollment. If we look at page 13, you'll see that the FTE aid per student was 24.22 in 2013-14, and it's now at $2,997. And that's been plotted on that graph. And primarily, the decrease in state aid down to 20% of the budget is all driven by the loss of students. You're not getting the state aid because the student enrollment is down. So everybody has that chart. It's not in the book, but I thought maybe that would help as well.
All right. Again, the next area we looked at was federal aid, but Nick already explained what federal aid was put in the budget. It's unique only because it's all stimulus money, and they used it this year to basically cover the lost revenue and the help with the operating budget.
And that was on page 12.
Again, I put up the summary chart so that you can see the revenues that we had findings in. Again, the charges to the other county is a minor change of $40,000. You don't need to look at the write-up on that. And that's only because we had some expense findings that we had to factor into the formulas.
We're now on page 16.
The next area you looked at was service fees. Those are the fees the students pay for various programs, like an IT fee or parking fee, whatever the fees are. And again, it's driven purely by the number of students that are enrolled. And based on our projection of FTEs, we had a $280,000 unfavorable variance in that account. Your next revenue is self-sustaining classes. Those are the adult ed classes. And again, the adult ed is it's a small revenue in your budget, but unfortunately you haven't been able to maintain that revenue figure over the past few years by about $280,000. It's just not attracting the people to the adult ed continuing ed type classes as you once had done. So all in all, your revenue shortfall is about $1,470,000. I shouldn't call it shortfall. Our projected unfavorable variance is $1,470,000. And again, that's based on our estimate of FTEs. So obviously, if the college can do better than we estimated, that will lead into that shortfall. I guess before we move on to expenses, does anybody have any questions on the revenue side? Okay.
Okay, yeah, continue.
All right, on the expense side, again, I'm just going to flip forward all the way to the summary chart near the end. Nick, should we talk about the vacant positions in the budget?
You can mention it, sure.
All right.
Is there a page for the summary chart?
Page 47 of that chart.
Well, I think that Chris wants to refer to
The chart on page
Page
19
19.
first.
Okay,
There's a few things that you need to be made aware of during the personnel side of the budget. The first is that in our projection for both 21, 22, 22, 23, we anticipated the settlement of the teacher's contract. I believe you approved it a couple of weeks ago, a couple of meetings ago. And the college indicated they hope to settle with most of the faculty members before the August 31st year end. So our projection assumes that that is in there. So you have to take that into account. The other item in the 22-23 proposed budget is that the college typically has vacant positions. That's one of the ways they manage their costs, is they try to leave positions vacant. And if they're not needed, they leave them vacant as long as they can until they are needed. The current budget contains about 54 vacant positions, as page 19 indicates, and it's also up on the board. And those positions have a total impact on the budget of about $2,143,000. So if the college were not to fill those positions, you would save about $2,143,000, plus the fringes, the associated fringe benefits. So again, there's about 14 positions included in that 54 where they budgeted zero because they don't anticipate filling them this year or having a need for them this year. And there's about 40 positions that have salaries budgeted against them and then fill them as they need, and that's built into the budget. So now if we go to the summary on page
31 maybe?
nope, that's fringe benefits. Oh,
40?
probably 30 minutes.
$39.
Yep. So there was no variance on the personnel side. On the full-time faculty staff, part-time, that all calculated out based upon what was being proposed, including the vacant positions, and I believe there was 11 authorized but unfunded positions as proposed by the college. So we didn't pick up any variance there because that's all been disclosed as being utilized and maintained as vacant if the enrollment doesn't justify hiring those positions.
I think in the previous meeting, you said it was 14.
I think it's 14.
Actually, I
Yeah,
think you said it was
well,
14.
They have asterisks next to them.
Yeah,
It's
14.
14, yeah.
So the next area we'll talk about are your contractual services, those are your supplies, utilities, items like that. Again, we really only had minor variances on all those accounts, about 430,000. And the bulk of it is contained in three areas. We have electricity, we have fuel for heating, and then we just have regular gasoline and fuel that the college needs. I think we're all well aware of the price of oil going up recently since they started doing their budget. So we had a little more current data when we factored it in, and we came off by about $430,000 between those three areas.
Thinking that we're going to spend more than they
More.
thought because of the,
Because of the current rise in the price of fuel and
Correct.
heating and all those other items that are driven by the cost of fuel. And there was also one other area I did forget to mention before, is just janitorial services. As your contract is up, the college did project a minor increase in the contract. Again, given that inflation is up about 8%, we used 8%, so that was another small variance. And that's what made up the $430,000. The next major category is fringe benefits. They account for almost $18 million, $19 million in your overall budget. And again, based on the settlement of the contract, what we tried to do was factor in where the ERS is the employee retirement system. We feel that you have a favorable variance there of about 210,000. The bulk of that is because the rates as published by the employee retirement system came in a little less than they were originally anticipated. The TRS and the TIA-CREF were projecting slightly over because of the settlement of the contract, because the settlement of the contract will all fall within the one contract period. You had workers' comp, which is a charge from the county. When we confirmed with the county, it was $25,000 less. And health insurance, the college factored in an increase. We felt it should be a little higher. We looked at the medical cost of living, which is about 2 points higher than the college used. Again, I think there's an anticipation that health insurance rates may rise because of all the backed up costs from COVID, where people couldn't have procedures now going to, and the cost of night shipments, the self-insurance plan might rise a little further. That came to 240,000. And your dental plan, which is minor, we had a small savings of 30. So all in all, on the expense side, on the $60 million budget, we had a variance of like $550,000 in favor.
Yeah, and I kind of would disregard the employee benefits because the analysis on the employee benefits takes into consideration the vacant positions, all but the 14 or the 18 that don't get filled.
Right.
Okay, so there's plenty of flexibility on that side.
So if we don't fill those positions, you'll incur savings, which would mitigate my unfavorable. finding.
Right. On the contractual service, the electric and the fuel, of course, everybody's aware of what's happening with that. So that could turn out to be a real shortfall on that side. But again, still manageable because they have the savings on the personnel side. And if you recall what I originally read, that there was about $2.6 million worth of federal fund flexibility in the budget as well.
Mr. Hines, did you have a question? You looked like you had a question. No, okay.
Okay? Right, so
So the next slide is on page 41. And as Nick said before, the college is on a different accounting methodology than the county because they're what's known as full accrual. So they have to record certain expenses that in most governments you don't have to. So what we did on this slide was we attempted to take the deficit that appears on the audited financial report and convert it back to the type fund balance that you're used to seeing on the county level. So we went to their audited report and you'll see that they were in the hole. They showed a deficit of $196.6 million. But The college had to record 1.3 million of accrued sick benefits, compensated absence, as we call it. That's the amount of sick and vacation time that's accrued by an employee if they were separated from service that you'd have to reimburse them for. They also had to record the liability for the employee retirement system and the teacher's retirement system. Even though you paid your bill in full, they now require you to record that shortfall that the pension plan itself has. So they submit a report. State tells you what that piece is for each municipality. And then we have the ever-present other post-employment benefits, the actuarial calculated exposure that you have for health insurance for all retirees in the future. And the college had to record $204 million worth of expenses for that. So when you back those out, they have approximately $10.6 million of surplus on a governmental basis. Add to that the $120,000 that we projected as a surplus for the 21-22 year, and they end up having about $10.7 million in fund balance to assist them in going forward.
Now, the significance of that number comes into play in the college's own budget that they submitted to you. On Schedule C,
Page,
well, there is no page number. Schedule C in the college budget. They don't have a page number.
okay. Yeah, it is there.
It's, do you have a page number?
No,
Oh. So it's a 5-year projection of the college's,
15 from the back.
about 19, about page 19. It stops at 16, and then it's 3 pages later.
okay,
Okay, continue.
thank you. So the fund balance that Chris just recalculated for you is actually being used by the college in this 5-year projection in the 22-23 year and the 23-24 year to balance their budget. Keep in mind that you're aware that the federal funds will be gone by the end of the 24 year, 25, 23 year. So if they're planning to use 6.6 million or whatever it is to balance the current year budget with federal funds, they're not going to have those funds available next year. So they'll have to pull those monies in from either fund balance, tuition increases. I guess they could ask for more state aid, hopefully larger enrollment, or from you as the county. In their projection, they're indicating that the sponsor contribution will go up by 2% over what's being asked for this year. And they have projected that tuition revenues will range from approximately $18 million to $23 million out to the 26-27 year, which in that year, they're anticipating a $4.3 million deficit. So the aggregate deficits created from the 24-25 year to the 26-27 year comes out to about $11.1 million. Using some hypothetical growth in enrollment, hypothetical growth in tuition, 2% increase in your contribution, and baselining their expenses from the 22-23 budget. So that's why we've also disclosed what that number should be, because it was also used in their projection.
All right, so if you go to
One, can I go back to that a second, Nick? So the county aid that you see on this 5-year projection shows going from 19.9 to 23 to 27 and 21.1 and then 21.5. So that's showing us making an additional contribution is that
In each year.
each year
Yeah.
as well, so that everyone should know.
One other item, so you've listed 4 or 5 items that would meet that bar. However, we haven't discussed other options that they have to them in order to
No.
reduce things.
So the summary at the bottom of page 41 basically identifies perhaps a $2 million shortfall, primarily $1.5 million of it coming on the revenue side, of which it's my understanding the college has segregated $2.5 million of federal funds that they can apply toward that shortfall, if that shortfall was to occur. So if in fact our projections are correct, and they do have a shortfall of $1.5 million, they can redirect this 2.5 million. They haven't indicated whether or not they would redirect the savings from the vacant positions toward that shortfall. How they do this?
No.
No. And if we go back to page, what page was that?
I think it's page 16.
We go back to page 16 and we
Or
look
19.
19. So 2.1, and then fringe benefits would run about another $500,000 to $1 million on those positions. So again, I don't know from a policy point of view, I'm not an educator. I don't know which of these positions they need to fill. They didn't indicate a priority on them, as I recall, in the budget submission. That's something you would have to ask them. I don't think that information was shared with us, right?
I didn't request it.
Right.
Can you just touch base on page 17, related to this topic? We have 653 positions proposed for 22-23, and we looked, we were down to 634 and then back up to 652. That was going back in time. So essentially, roll that forward 2-3 years forward, we dropped and now we're up. So how many positions did we have that were vacant in 2021 versus the ones requested here? I believe it was.
I think it was 27 vacant positions at various times in 21, 22.
Right, and then this is.
And then this year is about 54.
4.
And again, some of those could have been filled recently, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, but at the time of the report, it's 54.
So we have a sort of large increase in vacant positions for this budget. So thank you.
On the next page of the report, we started to sum up our conclusion. And I think that as you listen to what we'd said, we kind of identified areas that we think are of concern. Enrollment, number one, because enrollment affects your state aid, enrollment affects your tuition revenue, and ultimately how much the county has to contribute to operating the community college. We also indicated that, the use of the federal stimulus money, again, it was a great one-shot revenue source. It may all be applied this year to the budget. Tuition, we also discussed that by the time the legislature reviews the budget, those tuition rates are already published. There's limits to the ability for you to make too many modifications because you can't change tuition because you've already advertised that to students. So, probably that should be discussed early in the process with you. And then we also put down that, the college included a 5-year plan, which is a good thing to put in the budget because it allows you to see, based on current facts, where they think they're headed. And in that, as we said, we indicated a 2% increase in the county share, but also that there was still a shortfall that had to be addressed, by the college in order to balance the budget without asking for more than the 2%. Brings us to close.
I mean, if you just want, you don't have the exhibits on.
No,
No.
this is just the word.
So in the booklet, starting on page 44, again, you have the exhibits. And we have the 21-22 budget as compared to our estimate as to how 21-22 is going to turn out for the current academic year. Exhibit 2 is the administration's projection for the current academic year compared to ours and the difference between the two on Exhibit 2. Exhibit 3 is a comparison between the adopted budget for 21-22 and the proposed budget for 22-23, which shows an increase in expense of $523,000. If you go to Exhibit 4, there's a comparison between the proposed budget by the administration and our estimate of how the current year is going to compare and what the variances are on the revenue side and the expense side. And Exhibit 5 compares the college's proposed budget and our projected budget, which shows, of course, that $1.5 million shortfall on the revenue and the $550,000 underestimate on the expense. That pretty much, Mr. Chairman and committee members, takes you through our findings of the college.
Thank you, Mr. DeSantis. Questions from committee members, either committee? Mr. Hines?
Well, my questions are more for the college. One is, Dr. Young, when you look at page 9, the enrollment, I don't know if you've analyzed or had someone analyze it. Just jumps off the page that some schools are submitting the same number of people consistently. And then you look at others that have significant drops. Tuxedo, Goshen, Round Falls, Florida, and Washingtonville. Is there a reason for that, that those schools would drop significantly the number of students that come your way and the other schools seem somewhat stable?
The rhyme or reason to it, by high school is what you're asking.
Right.
I can't answer off the top, and especially in COVID times. There any sort of pattern that you could expect through community college history, it has just been blown out of the water, right? The college going pattern of students has been completely altered. So it can go by culture, family by family about what's going on right now. So I can't offer an educated response about why school by school. But a general remark to everyone in the room, you heard it over and over again about enrollment is the key here, about tuition dollars and state match. And so all of our efforts in moving forward for this year and that 5-year enrollment, the 5-year projection is absolutely centered on boosting enrollment. It's not just our problem, it's the 6 colleges of the Hudson Valley. It's a national problem. The students have disengaged from higher education. It's a plethora of problems that we could discuss for 3 hours. We don't want to do that, but it's a given that has happened. So we've gone all in, the resources we have, the hiring that we're doing, the programs that we have retained and are growing, and the programs that we're instituting is to get students in the door, programs that we have had, and the programs that we are starting. So for instance, 2 things that happened today is our hospitality, food, beverage. That's what this county is doing. We're going to drive enrollment in that direction, and we got a grant from the state today to fire up, and I've got Bill Fioravanti is in part here to talk about with agriculture programs as well. So that's what we're putting effort into, because that's what we know we have to go with getting students in the door, and in unconventional ways and in workforce ways. So that's the investment. And one of the I beg your pardon, one of the hires on that chart that has already occurred is a dedicated recruiter out of the admissions office who spend way more time out the door than in.
Seems that person should focus on those 5 schools with a significant reduction.
Agreed. And we've been able to get back into the high schools in the second half of spring 2022 because of COVID. Getting into the high schools has been an issue as well, and making those personal connections. You cannot overstate how important it is to get in front of students and their families and talk about this college. And we lost that.
I think Mr. Berger has something to add.
Yeah, I just want to point out that chart is not applications to the college. It's their graduating students in those schools. We're just trying to show the total population available. So it's not that those 5 colleges
There's a reduction.
is a reduction in them applying to Orange Community College. That's a reduction in their students in their own high school. This is their graduating.
Oh.
So it's the senior graduates.
That's the graduates.
I mean, it's been pretty stable.
Okay, so I read that wrong then.
Yeah, we just say that 87% of the students in the college come from the area.
Right.
And here's your colleges where you're drawing, the high schools you're drawing from. But it's not that's not their enrollment in the college, it's enrollment in high school.
Okay.
And Dr. Young, where is this admissions recruiter? Where is this on page 19?
I just don't know if that is on that list, but that is someone that we hired in the past year.
It would not be on the vacant position
Okay,
list
so
because
that's hired.
the person.
Because they hired,
is on
okay.
staff and hasn't for a few months.
All right.
Right. I have a few more.
Sure, absolutely. Keep going.
So in the past, I know that you used $1 million for the buyout of some of your senior professors. Did you analyze the savings that resulted, or was it a good move? Should we consider it again? Do you have the ability to do it? Is there opportunities there?
And that was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
At this
Just know
point,
what the savings were.
the payoff should have come by now. I don't have that at the tip of my tongue. And, I should let Paul speak to this, but my off the cuff answer is that We don't have that many retirees that might be eligible, at least in the faculty ranks. Paul, do you want to continue down that road?
Yeah, if I could, one of the things, if you think about, if we need to reduce the number of employees, contractually, there are a number of issues that we have to explore prior to doing anything. And one of them is to re-offer that program or a similar one. So timing wise, we would be looking at that and come back with a proposal that would have to go through legislative approval as well. So the answer is, the short-term answer is any of those programs that include a buyout, there is a cost, a net cost in year one. And then the savings accrue in years 2 and beyond. And that's what we saw. I don't have exact numbers, but that's what I saw from that. That actually took place before I arrived on the scene, but that's what the numbers indicated.
Can you analyze that for us and get it to Joe?
Certainly.
As chairman, I think that would be helpful. And let's see, my next question is, we're the most expensive community college in the region. Yet, you look at the expenses in Westchester, you would think that would be higher. What are we doing right or wrong with respect to our peers in the other counties?
What's missing from that list is fees. So I would like to see their fees added to our tuition, and I would almost bet we're still not number one on that list when that happens. So that's one thing that I would want to see added. And then, what are we doing right or wrong? I think we're going to be in the ballpark when that happens.
Chris, do you have any data on that? I know you work for other counties.
No, I mean, because every student could have different fees. There's no way for us to go through and analyze that.
Are these answers published anywhere in their budget,
On their website,
public disclosure?
I'm sure they have it on their
on
website.
their website, all the fees are published.
On their websites, the weight fees would be published?
So they lower the tuition and increase the fees, is that what you're suggesting?
In some cases, yes.
Now, we talked about fees the last couple of years. Have you made any adjustments with that?
We have not raised fees in years.
I know you had indicated like it costs more to educate a nursing student, I think you said, but you didn't raise those lab fees or anything like that?
We do have a proposal to review fees fall this year and present to our board recommendations for possible changes in the fee structure that would tie into next year's budget. But we haven't done the analysis yet.
I think it's important because you're getting beat up when you look at a report like this. In other words, if the media got it, they'd say, what is Orange County doing wrong? When your answer is, we're doing it right, we're just not charging. So you could keep the tuition stable and raise the fees and solve a lot of problems, it sounds like.
One of our sister colleges prides itself on being the lowest tuition of all community colleges. But they do it by,
Charging the janitor fee and the
they
bathroom
have
fee.
whatever their fees are, I don't know fully. But I think I know that is what our trade is off.
So we're up front on our fees.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Menuda, did you have a question?
So I'm just, as an overall, I'm sort of looking at this and it appears that we're inverted, right? So we've got decline in student enrollment, pretty significant from 10 years ago and continuing on. We have an increase in costs, and so that makes no business sense to me whatsoever. So I think we really need a plan to, we can wish for enrollment on one hand, but in the reality is we have to accept what's there. And so how do we handle financial aspects of that in running this as a business? So I would ask that the Orange County Community College Board look into that and make whatever decisions on a business stance, whether they be hard or not, to get us to a level of balance. My understanding from the discussion that we had earlier is that without the additional federal funding, we're about 7 billion in deficit on this one, 6.6.
Yeah, something like that, yes. It's 6.6 million federal funding.
Right, so it doesn't look so
Program
great
into
this
the
year,
budget.
but next year it will. And, these are real concerns that I have. I would ask that you please bring something to us that makes some financial sense into what we're seeing.
If I could, I'll just let you know that our thinking on the subject is obvious. If the projections go the way, they look, that are going to be in a financial crisis 2 to 3 years down the line. We're using the federal funds to support ourselves partially this year and most of it next year. We're also planning on use of the fund balance to get us through the following year, because even if we decided tomorrow that we wanted to make changes in the structure of the college, because of the contractual issues with the 3 union contracts that we have and all the things that have to be done before those changes could take place, we're looking at a window of probably the fall of 24 before we could actually execute a plan. So that is our thinking. The board, finance and audit committee works closely with those of us on the finance side of the college in talking about these issues. And so we can certainly provide you with more detail, but just to give you a high level look at how we're approaching it, that's how we're approaching it.
I thank you and I appreciate that. And listen, there's a lot of really intelligent people on the board. I'm sure you'll get it all worked out. From a business standpoint, you're in a position of corporate takeover, which isn't really something to do as a government level. But if that were the case, it would be significant restructuring. So, again, I have grave concerns about what's happening and what we're seeing in these numbers. Thank you.
Ms. Tortel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report that was mentioned, that would go to ED, I'd like to see it at Ways and Means also, the analysis of the retiree benefit package, because I was here for that. I agree with what legislator said. The college is facing some serious problems, and from a business standpoint, it doesn't look good for the future, even the very immediate future. One of the things that's been discussed, and I know I've mentioned it over the last 4 years, I know you were forced into it during the pandemic, was online learning. Do you receive the same amount of tuition for online learning as you do for in-person learning? And how have you parlayed that into the future of the college? Because in the beginning, when I had mentioned it, there was too many moving parts in order to get online learning. Well, we now have online learning. It's proven that you were able to do it during the pandemic. And what are we doing? I recently saw an advertisement for the college on I don't even remember what channel it was. Might have even been ABC. And nowhere in that commercial was there a mention that I noticed or would jump out for online learning, which is a huge part of the market for the future of education. Now, mind you, I'm old school. When I had to go back to community college in my 40s and I saw, had to do these chat rooms and stuff, it was kind of a culture shock to me. But the kids today, that's their methodology of learning. And those are the markets that you're trying to pull from. So where are we on that? And why aren't we driving that forward as part of a huge part of our offering for the college and maybe an answer to raising the number of students that you get for tuition?
A fine question. So yes, we are definitely more of an online college than we were in 2019. So when the pandemic hit, 6% of our classes were online. So one day later, 100% of our classes were online on like March 14th, 2020. So the question remains, like, where will that settle out? And that's the question, when you think about what is a community college, certainly some part of it is what we in this room may call like liberal arts. It can be delivered online, but a significant part of it is nursing and rad tech and things that will never appropriately be delivered fully online all the time. So a very significant part of it, and perhaps the growing part of it, is hands-on. So you put a question mark over how much of this should responsibly and consistently be made available online going forward. So what's the percentage of that? And then when we divide into that further is correctly advising and counseling students how to do that so that they're actually learning, right? So there are higher education providers who will gladly take that tuition dollar. What used to be called the right to fail, or gladly take that tuition dollar and provide you with a certificate or degree at the end of it, and maybe it doesn't mean much. Or do we teach you how to learn in that online environment? And that is the part that we've got to get right. Just because you're 18, what we have absolutely learned in the pandemic is because you can operate one of these does not mean that you can learn to operate your mind. So that was a long answer, Legislator Capel, to a seemingly simple question, other than to say is we are going to be an online institution, more so than we were in 2019, but it's going to be a responsible percentage of our tuition dollar, which is the same tuition dollar, whether you're online or whether you're.
Is it possible for the student to do the curriculum other than obviously a practical lab like nursing? But I'm sure you addressed that also during the pandemic because you were still graduating students
We had to.
from the
But
programs.
there were delays. There were, like our grad tech and PTA, they were delayed by a semester, so they had to come back and finish their curriculum at a later date because they couldn't do some of their lab learning. But other curriculum didn't have to. They
Did,
New York, NICED, New York State Department of Ed, has to approve different degrees to be offered fully online. So we are not necessarily approved to offer most of our degrees online. So those are other approval processes that we would still have to seek.
and in cost analysis, is it cheaper to run an online program than it is to run an in-person classroom?
Costs just as much to pay a faculty member to teach online than it does in person.
There's other intrinsic costs involved in a course other than the faculty.
Sure,
Right.
servers and the electronics, the technology, it is not that much cheaper. It may not even be cheaper. I don't know. I shouldn't even try to answer that question, but it
With
is.
the statement
do
that
not
I think
make-
we should answer that question.
Yeah, I think we should add that.
You have bricks and mortar, right? You have bricks and mortar and, as a
Yeah.
county, we provide a lot of real estate. So in addition to what's already being provided here, we also have the real estate aspect. It's millions, millions, 6 million.
6.6.
I understand you're asking about
6.6.
the opportunity we should explore.
The opportunity is been there, and I think that you're missing a huge point to take us into the future and step into the 21st century on education and the way that people are learning, looking to learn. Because there are so many people who will be able to go on and do an online course after midnight, after their second shift, after their kids are in bed, that we're not offering, and we're losing that person to these other courses, Southern New Hampshire University and so on and so forth that are offering these things online. And I think that doesn't behoove the college. It doesn't behoove the residents of Orange County who are looking to that, and even other people who would come from another county onto our community college on an online basis because we're available and we're cheaper.
I think it's a very active question about what would our niche be, because everybody is having this conversation now. So what would distinguish our online course from Rockland, Dutchess, everybody else too? So I respect the question, absolutely. Everybody's asking themselves right now, what is it? What would be our niche online that would draw a student from Nebraska to choose us versus someone else? So
I think it's something that the college and the board needs to look at very hard and very fast. Because you're facing, as legislative Menudo, you're facing a shutdown. You're facing not being able to provide valuable service to the residents of Orange County due to economic reasons. And whatever you can do to capture that extra student, that extra $1,200 or $1,500 in tuition, you need to do it. And you need to do it fast. Thank you.
Legislator Reynolds?
I think.
You haven't spoken yet. I'll wait for Mr. Cheney.
Okay. So it actually bounces off what you were just saying about niche and stuff like that. So my first question is about, so enrollment is important, but retention is just as important. So what is the college doing around retention? Because you can get someone through the door, but that doesn't mean they're going to stay a semester or two later. Because that would even help with these projections, like if we knew that we were able to retain students. So what are some of those strategies?
thank you for that question. That has been large emphasis. I would say it's almost a third of our strategic plan is the first part of that. You've heard me talk about guided pathways at any point in my presidency. That is all about retaining the student at the college. And so maybe a visit to E&E in the future to deliver the results now that we have guided pathways underway and we can demonstrate evidence that the students that we have with the changes that we have implemented in the organization of onboarding students, with the reforms in developmental education, and in a countless number of changes that we have made over the past 5 years, we are showing evidence that once we have students in the door, they are staying. They are accruing more credit hours, part-time students and full-time students, and what are called momentum points, that if the student does X, they are more likely to stay enrolled and be successful. That is happening. So we are doing a much better job of retaining students. What's happening is that because of, particularly because of the pandemic, but certainly even prior to the pandemic, I have to admit, the number of students getting to us in the first place has been dropping off. But thank you for that question. We put a lot of efforts there. What is happening right now is that we know that there is a lot of energy needed to generate, to fight the wave of whatever's going on in the environment, to get more students to us in the first place, and talk about the value of education in the first place.
And enrollment is an issue across higher education. It's not just a community college issue. But I think whether it's looking into the opportunity of more online courses or offerings, and I think you touched a little bit on this earlier, just developing different programs perhaps that, like, are there any programs the college has noticed or any degrees that perhaps have had a decline in enrollment or perhaps aren't as popular anymore? You know, those kinds of things, maybe phasing those out and bringing in programs that are more aligned with where the interests are or where the job markets are going at this time too.
Again, another astute question, and that's a call I have on Thursday to have a very data-driven way to make that assessment in a non-emotional way. Yeah,
because I know it can be hard if you've had like a, you know, kind of like a degree that's been around for a long time, but if it's kind of losing its momentum, it may be time to let things go and bring in something new. You know, like you said, what is the college's niche? Maybe it's going to continuously change throughout time, and maybe it's time to. Well, it is time. It sounds like you're on your way to do that assessment. So I would love to see that once it's done. Thank you.
Can you get us some sort of report on these numbers that you're saying that are showing for your guided pathways program?
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Okay.
That's
Get
a
us,
good bragging.
get it to
stuff.
Jean as soon as you can. Mr. Cheney?
Yeah, before I get into the questions I had, let me circle back to the discussion about these online universities. How transferable are their credits to a four-year university that a lot of the Ox students, SUNY Orange students are trying to go to? Is there a difference?
Typically not. If a college is accredited by Middle States, our accreditor, if, you know, students done their homework about what major are they in and what major do they hope to transfer to. Let me say in broad strokes, no, you know, online has matured to the point where most people will take it. There will be exceptions, but broad strokes, no.
Over time, is that going to possibly change in that students who do transfer to a program from an online program to a four-year university, the four-year university may start looking at them differently based on the results? Because I know that SUNY Orange has a tremendous reputation with a lot of four-year colleges relative to the transferability of their students after 2 years with an associate's degree, and they're right in line with the students that have been at those schools for 2 years.
Yeah, we command respect. Just learned today we have a student going to Yale today, so that's what we can do.
The question that I have is related to enrollment. And we've heard from this review that there is a question or a concern relative to the numbers that you're projecting versus what the trends have been based on past numbers. So could you just talk about why you're confident in your numbers and what gives you the reason to be confident in those numbers?
Well, we have an enrollment task force headed by Trustee Liddell. We have been working hard for, oh my gosh, two and a half years under his encouragement. We have our Vice President for Student Services. We have SUNY has helped us with a grant through Lumina Foundation. So we have a consultant that has been purchased for us with like a consultancy that we probably wouldn't have paid for or found on our own, with keen guidance that's being fed into that task force as well, validating the steps that we are taking to drive enrollment in our direction that is not only nationally through that consultancy, but it is specific to our situation in Orange County and the Hudson Valley and so forth. So we feel that we're getting this validated by experts, and then with the energy that we have and the hiring that we're making, somebody acknowledged that marketing that we're doing that's both targeted, some layers of it targeted at the traditional 18-year-old, and then some of it, hopefully you've seen, it's being served out to an adult audience. So multi-pronged that, like I said, we're going all in here. So we thought our numbers would do better than what you saw today.
So the hot programs that exist, how does that equate to, you know, an enrollment increase? Are you looking to specifically go to the programs that are, you know, where you've got a lot of interest, and are you trying to expand that and look to ways to do that?
Both the programs and also what we're learning about, like, barriers to students enrolling in the first place. It's like a multifaceted approach, right? Gen Z in particular is more like Gen X in that they're like, what's at the end of this? What's in this for me, right? What is the job at the end of this? So learning to talk more with younger people about jobs than we would have in the past. So changing the way that we're talking about why do you go to school. We have gotten lumped in, even though we're community college. Everybody in this room knows that the cost point is lower. We are absolutely lumped in, however, with fine schools that we'd like to talk about to be lumped in with, the Marists and the Ivy Leagues, but we're all lumped in that you're going to be in debt, you're never going to get out of it, you're never going to be a homeowner. Somehow that has become part of our story too. So being able to talk in our messaging about what does it mean, what is the cost, what is the investment here, what is the financial aid that's available. So it is the hot programs, it is workforce, but it is also what does it mean to get in the door in the first place, the steps, educating people about what does it take to be about a student, not assuming that you know how to get in that door in the first place.
And then the vacant positions that you've shown, how are they tied to your enrollment projections?
Yeah, I gotta get to that page in here. They are all reviewed very, very carefully. They all make it to my desk. They all make it to the vice presidential level, and they are all tied to programs where there are students that need to. We have had a lot of attrition. We got 54 positions that have opened, a lot of attrition. So we have, particularly, I think I know faculty positions that the others, but there have been full-time faculty where we know that there are students in classes that are not covered. And importantly, our faculty are advisors in the pathways. We lean heavily on faculty also advising academically and now workforce advising as well. So those are positions where we have students waiting. Paul might be able to speak to more of the staff positions.
Well, what we do on that, creating that vacancy list, is we put in there the positions that we would like to have. all went well. We recognize all doesn't always go well, it's unlikely to go well. So we, as the gentleman from the auditing firm mentioned, we've already put no budget against a number of those positions. The number I have in my head is 18, which is different from theirs, but some number that we already have said we're not going to fill because we don't need them in the immediate future. And particularly with faculty positions, we do have the ability to run the courses with adjunct faculty, and where we decide we're going to hire in the academic hiring cycle, it's much better to hire for somebody to start in the spring. So this year, we do have a number of positions on the faculty side for the first time in a number of years that we are hiring full-time tenure track faculty to start in the spring. Those positions that became open after that bit of hiring was agreed to, we won't fill until September of the following year. So those positions would be taken out. And as President Young said, we hold these positions open until we start to get a feel for how the year is going. So what is the enrollment number actually when all is said and done? Unfortunately, in community colleges, we don't know enrollment until classes start. It's just the nature of the beast. So how is enrollment going? What are our other costs looking like? Utilities being a big one this year. What is that actually going to look like? So we hold off and then hire as we get more comfortable with, are we going to meet the budget? Are we not going to meet the budget? And so that set of discussions happens at the president, vice presidential level on every other week basis. We talk about open positions that it's time that we either have to fill or let's bite the bullet. We're not going to fill this one this year. So it ties into the references that the auditors made. We may not have specifically said it to them, but we do use that vacancy list as another way to cushion the blow if our enrollment is not there. It wouldn't only be the use of the federal funds, it would be judicious use of filling or not filling the vacant positions.
So there's a pretty close relationship in your evaluations between the two.
Right. For example, in the recent years, this year and last year, we have tried to build up the student services side of the house. They took a larger share of the cuts during the years leading up to COVID than perhaps they should have. And so now where enrollment is so key, and that student services is the area where enrollment activity, a lot of it happens. So we have strategically said, with the support of the board, I might add, to hire in that area to focus on enrollment. And so yes, there is a strategic time.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if you go to the page 9 and you look at your enrollment, back in 2013 to 2014, the difference between proposed and actual is only 45 full-time students. And if you take those numbers, it goes all the way from 45 to 56. I guess 15, 16 wasn't good because it goes up to 232. And then it continues to just grow from there, even before COVID. 2017 to 2018, the difference between proposed and actual was 208 students. So it's gotten a little worse where we kind of dropped off with COVID, but it's been a trend already to have declining enrollment even before COVID. Other questions?
Just dovetailing on that, inverting that, it could also be seen that the projections are just higher than they should be. For each, they're consecutively growing.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The projections are maybe unrealistically high as proposed.
That's what I'm suggesting. Thank you
Yes.
for clarifying.
Yep. Okay, any other questions from committee members?
Yeah,
Mr. Padu?
there's a lot been said today, and a lot of it I would have talked about as well. Look, financially, Orange County Community College, what are you guys doing innovatively to get more students? There's been other, I'll give you an example. The IDA works with Legoland. How have you guys talked about possibly, look, you cost the county, I'm sorry, not you guys cost the county, but charge back their $7 million, right? Whatever I think it said, whatever it is, but we could cut that in half. Why don't we offer a scholarship to bring full-time students back from other colleges? You'd save the county half of that money right there. I mean, I don't see the innovative work happening at the college. What I will say is that wasn't mentioned, or actually Joe mentioned it, that we already pay 6.6 million in debt service for all building costs, stuff like that. You know, you're getting 2.6, you have almost 3 million in job vacant positions that you have $3 million budgeted for, and you're declining students. I just, in my mind, I don't see, and you're asking us to give you 880,000 more dollars this year on top of the million that you've been flat. I have a big concern with that, and I'm not going to support giving that. And the fact is that you need all these services, but I'm not understanding when your enrollment's declining at the rate it's going, what are you doing to prevent? I mean, I see what you might need these, but for what? There's not any more need there. There isn't like there's 2,000 more students or 150 more students where, gee, we got to do this, we got to do this. We can't keep up. It's none of that. You're on the trend downside. And look, we're here to help you. We've been willing to help you all this time. I don't see the college making the moves that they need to make sure that you keep us viable. You know, I'll just tell you that I know myself financially with the county, yeah, we're in great shape because we plan for stuff. And one comment, like lawyers talking about online stuff, you know, well done is better than well said, that's for sure. So you want to talk about maybe online classes, bringing people back, because that's where it's going, in my opinion, too. You know, I think there's a lot of things that the college has to look at, the board has to look at, innovative ways to help reduce the county's costs. I'll just say that's where I stand, and I probably won't be supporting your increase this year until I see some way that you guys are making it better for us.
Let me respond to two things today that I hope would at least give you hope. You're right, you see the number of students graduating from high school in Orange County decreasing. We all know that the number of 18-year-olds, generally speaking, with some exceptions, it's difficult in the Northeast. The funding model, the county aside, the state, you saw the extra chart provided by PFA that the state's share goes down because the funding model they have is tied to the number of students. So we have been trying to create our own new funding model for the college to try to relieve you and create our own revenue. So two things today. We welcomed a new employee to head up our take on the food, beverage, and hospitality industry today. That is a growing industry here. So the innovation, I hope, is to try to respond to this as quickly as possible on the workforce side, not on the credit side. So you won't see that activity right away. You won't see that in the credit count. But what you will see right away are contracts being made, I make a promise, with Legoland, with the advisory board that we've had set up in anticipation of his hire, and starting to do workforce training for these industries that the IDA will have attracted and other people have. That starts today. Second thing that happened, it'll be on Mid-Hudson News as you leave here today, is that we have been named the lead community college in Hudson Valley to support the cannabis industry in the Hudson Valley. So we will be bringing together whatever industries, employers want to play in this space. This is a brand new industry. So what we bring to bear is our ability to bring the employers together, to network them, we can build their curriculum, we can build their training, we can listen to them, understand what their skills and their workforce needs are. We can convene our sister community colleges and we can reflect that back out, build the training and charge them for it. So is that going to be on the credit side? Probably not much of it because there's not campus credit courses right now, but we know how to build training. So that won't appear in the charts that you conventionally look at. that will show up in other accounts. And that's how we're trying to build our own work right now before there's other ways to express this. So we are trying, moving as fast as we can.
Just
And
as
Lego,
suggestion here for a
and
second.
Lego, with Legoland specifically, we have the high, right now with Legoland, if a student, not even a student, an employee, will work for Legoland for 3 days, right now, 2 of them are on weekends, they can come to our college, they get 6 credit hours for free from Legoland. And that's an agreement we made with Legoland, so we're out there, we're hustling.
And what is this job title for the hospitality?
He's the executive director of Orange County, he's the executive director of Orange County Food Tech.
Food tech. Okay, Mr. Menuda, you had.
So just a quick comment. So there's a, synergy when we're many years old. There's great synergy in the room. You've got Bill here, the IDA, you have your needs. We have some mega companies coming into Orange County. They're looking for certain things, and you're looking for certain things, and we all have to help each other fulfill these pockets, right? So I think working.
And we have
together-
collaborated, for example, on the Canvas initiative, that's something we collaborate on. So I agree, we need to do more, but those relationships are there, the paths are there, no question about it.
I just want to make the comment, that's all, just so it's apparent.
Chairman Vidal?
This was obviously a very, very productive dialogue. And I applaud the college for looking at different ways because we were here just a week or a month ago and we were talking about how we have to do business differently. We live in a different world, like it or not. And we have the same situation with Valley View. We were riding very high, 90% occupancy, and we were doing very, very well. Well, that's not the case anymore. And this is the same case as with the college. So I applaud you putting your enrollment team together. But just as Mrs. Martin said, you don't have a crystal ball, and neither do we. So for us to commit 4%, which is kind of high, knowing that your 4-year projection, by the way, I thought that was excellent that you included it in your report. I really did. It gave us a better picture, but knowing that leaves me a little hesitant of moving forward now. And in talking with finance and budget, it's my understanding that if we wanted to, and I think we're all committed to working with the college and the trustees and the staff to make sure that we do continue to have one of the best community colleges in the state, but we have to do it together. We've heard a lot here this afternoon, but not all of our colleagues are here. They haven't heard it. So maybe the suggestion would be, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with Mr. Perdue, is that we don't move ahead with an increase. Obviously, we're contributing, but then we review this in 6 months and see how these things are going along, because maybe that crystal ball is starting to become a little bit clearer. We have a better idea of your finances. And if you start to implement or commit to some of the ideas that you brought up, as well as some of my colleagues here, we might be on the right track. So I just offer that as consideration. for
Yes, and
members
again,
of the committees.
on this Schedule C, page 19, these county aids lines for this 4-year plan is assuming, again, a compounding, but 2% annual increase every year. And again, remember, for everyone that should know, that our current funding of 19,052,000 or something like that, 520,000, whatever it is, that's a
052, 19052.
19,052, right, 19,052,000. That's the floor. You have to spend the floor every year. You can't go below that no matter what. So, Mr. O'Donnell,
Sure,
you have a comment?
right, so, Minority Leader Duke mentioned he's not gonna support the 880,000. Chairwoman Benelli just said she wants to look at it in 6 months, so it looks like you're not getting $880,000 increase. I don't have a crystal ball, but I seem to be able to count those. What effect is that gonna have on you?
We will need to find that 800,000 somewhere else. I would point out that in our request this year, we asked for a 4.16%, I believe it is, 4.6% increase.
1.6.
4.6. And we broke it out as 3% would be what we were normally asking for cost of living, because I would remind the committees that 80 to 85% of our budget is personnel. All
Like everybody else.
union contracts are negotiated in consultation with, in some cases, as the final say of the county. So we've been paying these wage increases duly negotiated, and you know, we're contractually bound to do it. I have no problem with doing it. But we do not have the final say, should I say, in those raises. So that piece, I would be disappointed if we didn't see at least some coverage of those increases that were negotiated in good faith with the county and our various unions. The extra piece was $300,000, which translated to about 1.6%. That was an additional request to bolster our efforts on enrollment. So that money was proposed to be used for additional people in the recruitment area and marketing. So, you know, that is, we've all heard it multiple times today, enrollment is the key. So that money we have to spend. And it's just a question of how we will get it. But this would certainly complicate matters significantly.
Quick question on that. You have marketing, right? You're planning on taking more of the market share. From what I'm seeing, there isn't market share to be taken. And every community college is on the same downward trend that we are. You're gonna grab some maybe, but you know, is the funding in that marketing at $330,000? Are you gonna get $330,000 back in tuition? Do you believe so?
Adults, yeah.
Okay. I'd like to see I'd love to see that happen. But those are the sort of things that I look at when I'm looking at business plan and how it's going to move forward. I'm just very concerned, and it's not anything that the college has done. It's simply the way I see it, the way the market is. And we've experienced this several years ago. Same thing, and then we have some.
Mr. Cheney? Paul?
Yeah, I agree that 880,000 is tough pill to swallow. However, I don't think we continue to remain flat. I mean, I think we've been flat the last several years, so I think some increase is warranted. Just a matter of finding out what increase is going to work for everybody. Also, getting back to the cannabis conversation, I do have a concern there. I know Cornell Cooperative Extension has not been involved in cannabis the way they've been involved in other crops, mainly because Cornell University won't allow it, because it either would or could affect their federal funding, since cannabis is not legal on the federal level. So I think the college should look into that, see how that might be affected. I don't know if that's a real concern or a fear that the university has, but
Okay, not from the city.
Okay.
Not from the city.
All right, yeah, we'll see. Anyway, that's something you should definitely look into, to move down that road, because that could potentially be devastating.
Absolutely, very carefully have moved so far. Thank you.
It's more of a quick comment. I think, based off what a lot of what's been said, I think what would be helpful is, with that increase that's being requested, to see, we've heard in general where it's, what it's being allotted for. But I think seeing on a more strategic level where it's going, because I agree, that, increases are going to be warranted as time goes on. And I also, the way I think about it is to really be able to address some of the enrollment and retention issues, some level of investment is going to be needed. So I don't know that not having an increase is the answer, but I think if we could be more informed in what that increase would be going to, I think would be helpful. That's kind of the overarching theme, is that I don't know that everyone is really aware of the nuance that goes into all of this. I mean, some of it is more clean cut, like the, you know, the contracts and the salary stuff, but then perhaps knowing what some of those marketing efforts would look like, or some of the efforts around enrollment, I think would be helpful.
All right. Okay, so just my comment right now is it seems like we have a choice. We pick the number 0, 300, or 880. Mr. Cheney?
Yeah, as county legislators, we basically put the college over the last 4 years in the position it's in. I see a lot of good, because we've been flat. We have not given many increases. The increases that they've suffered in terms of their standard costs, the contractual things, we haven't even supported that. So I think it's time that we stepped up. I think the 3% is definitely warranted. And I think that going forward and trying to build programs, the additional amount of money will be put to good use. So I would just encourage us to, as difficult as it may seem, to step up and, you know, fund the college based on their request. Because if you look at the 8%, it's about 2% a year, or the $800,000. I don't know what it comes to, but certainly right around 2% a year, possibly maybe even less.
So what number does that come out to be? I mean, I pulled the 300 because he said that was the 1.6% of the increase. So you're talking about the 3%, which would be 580,000.
I'm suggesting that we fund it as requested.
Oh, as requested. Okay. Mr. O'Donnell?
Yeah, I'd just like to know where you got the 300 from.
He said
So,
that,
Let
he
me
said,
just go back, sorry, the contract that you're blaming us for, but that's okay. So what was that? That's fine. So how much was that out of the 880? I thought it was 500 something.
I thought he said 580.
The faculty association contract, the retro portion that is payable in a couple of weeks is 1.9 million.
We had money set aside.
That we had accrued some of that. The going forward
I'm
is
trying to help you.
is about
3%. What number was it that you said out of the 880? And I thought you said 500 something. Ralph, can you help me with that?
Yeah, what, this is, if I may speak?
Yes, thank you.
Our approach, when we put together the ask, was as simple as this. 3% increase, just like we charge increase in tuition to our students. We had not had an increase in 2 years. We were flat the last 2 years in our budget, still paying increases for contract negotiations as they were settled. All right. The difference between the 3 and the 1.6%, and I don't have that number in my head, but it's probably 300 something or 200 something. I don't know what it is. But that we were saying that might be a one-time, not part of the floor, a one-time additional supplement that we could use for our enrollment task force to keep driving that task force and the marketing initiatives and things like that. Because the marketing is also going to go after our workforce development programs and initiatives, and they're certificate based or credential based. They're not degree programs right now, but of course workforce development is needed, because if you look at our part-time students, they've increased. We're almost 49% part-time students. 4 years ago we were down to like 40%. That part-time student base is growing, and a lot of that's going to be driven by initiatives as we take on new workforce development programs and things like that, regardless of the age of them. It's kids right out of high school, they can work at Taco Bell and make $20 an hour. So why do I want to spend that kind of money and go to Orange County Community College? So those are all initiatives that we need to continue to grow. And the additional 1.6% was a one-time push for us to drive that whole task force. The 3%, we would agree, that should be our floor go forward into next year.
Okay, thanks.
So that's how we kind of propose the budget as we develop it.
Okay, so I see 0, 300, or 880. I'm gonna support the 880, so you know that.
Okay, so just so everybody knows, $19 million, the previous year's budget, times 3% is $571,586. And the 1.6% is $304,846.
Can I clarify what I heard?
Sure, Mr. Menudo.
I believe Ms. Martucci mentioned potentially a supplemental appropriation.
Yeah, yeah, that's what that's how we were looking at it.
Okay.
You know, the floors is the floor. We haven't had an increase in 2 years. 3% we felt was adequate because we increased our tuition to our students by 3%. Everybody has skin in the game.
Just want to make sure I heard the funding type.
Right.
Potentially.
And then, you know, the enrollment piece was the 1.6% that goes to our enrollment task force for the marketing and, you know, pushing through new programs and initiatives.
For myself, I would like to see potentially a supplemental appropriation and see how we work this out with regard to enrollment and whether it's actually going to move. So that would be my suggestion.
Yes, but no, you can't just call it, wait a minute. You just can't call something a supplemental appropriation, because once you supplement it, you add it to the floor, it becomes your base for next year. Is that what you're gonna say,
That's what I
Deb?
was gonna say, and Nick, correct me if I'm, wrong, but once the floor is the floor. You can't go back down that extra
Correct.
300,000.
Right. Mr. Hines?
That's exactly what I was gonna say. If you're looking for one-time money, you should use your ARP money. Because we can't give you one time, we're there forever once we give it to you. Any number we give you this year, you get forever. Because we can't go back.
I'll increase the floor.
That's what's going on.
You got to touch salt here today.
I mean, you know, you look at this is where we got into trouble. If you go back many years ago, when the college had the issue with the technology, we got the money from the county to do the technology issue, but the floor didn't increase for 3 years. So that started the downward trend as far as a bad financial situation. And now we haven't had 2 years of increases that, again, like I said, you look at all our expenses, 87% of our expenses are personnel and benefits. That's driven by our collaborative contracts and agreements with the county. We've been paying that the last couple of years with no increase to those contract increases and health insurance and dental and retirement plans and things like that. We're part of that group, okay? We all agreed to that many years ago, and that's okay. But we still need help. We can't throw it on the backs of the students because, nobody wants to see student increases in tuition every year. Nobody wants to see that. But guess what? Everybody has to have some skin in the game. Everybody has to help out. And, that's where we are. We didn't have an increase in tuition during the pandemic, which was okay. We were fighting. We started the pandemic. The state called us up and said, expect a 50% decrease in state funding next year. That's what we were dealing with.
He's not the governor anymore.
No, but the Finance and Audit Committee of the board, we met every Wednesday, all through the summer for like 3 months, for 3 to 5 hours every Wednesday. Because every week we were getting new mandates from SUNY, we were getting new cuts or anticipated cuts from the state, and we were cutting and hashing and redoing our numbers just to break even. We all made it through, because I think we only ended up with a 20% cut in state funding that year. But we're on top of our finances. We work on it all the time. And again, I think this is a fair proposal, what we're asking for. Even the 4.6% is fair considering where we've been over the last couple of years.
If I could answer Legislator O'Donnell's question, just taking the CSEA contract, and again, I don't mean to sit here and cry, but we have no impact on the result of the CSEA contract. That is a county contract. Just that contract alone cost us $235,000 a year. And never mind our other 2 contracts. So an $800,000 increase, I understand it is significant. I understand that we're asking, you know, the county to pay more. I understand you guys have a responsibility to operate as efficiently as you possibly can, and that means we do too. But I don't think it is unreasonable to at least get help on the personnel side of those contractual increases, particularly the CSEA.
Deb, do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, you mentioned the IT project. That didn't increase the floor because it became a capital project.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
So
just
if-
so, I just wanted everyone to
No,
be aware.
that was the
That's why-
agreement at the time.
Okay.
That was the agreement. We won't give it to you as a floor increase, but we'll give it to you as whatever you call it, the capital project. So at the time, everybody said, yeah, all well and good. But that put us behind the eight ball over a 3-year period, big time, that we've never really gotten back.
What's the word for one time?
One shot.
Thank
One-
you.
One shot.
That's where we're at.
One shot.
Mr. Paduk, you had hand up again?
Yeah, I agree with Kevin Hines too, and I'm reading here, you have $835,874 in the New York State chargeback account, which you guys can use these funds for capital construction, cost of financing, and up to 1/2 the purchase price of equipment. You have 2.6 in ARPA money, and you got 3 million available to you in your jobs, that your vacant positions. I don't see the count. You said, Ralph, you mentioned about putting it on the backs of the students. We're putting it on the backs of the taxpayers. So I'm not going to support it. I want to see a better plan before we give you any more money, because if we give it to you now, like Kevin said, that's our bottom line there for next year. So I want to see some improvements first.
Okay. Ms. Tortel?
Just for a point of clarification, you had mentioned reducing the amount. We mentioned the floor of once we've raised that floor of the budget, but then Chairwoman Benelli had mentioned holding off and giving it at a later date. In relationship to all of that, if we do it, you had also said a one-time thing where we did it into the capital project. We do it under the way Chairwoman Benelli said, will that also raise the floor if we don't do it here?
Supplemental appropriation.
Yes.
Okay, so that'll also, it'll
Yes.
also raise the floor no matter what, unless we put it into a capital project.
Right, and it would have to be.
There'd have to be a capital project.
Categorizing.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I
So it's
had
all,
it clear. in
all
my head.
partial or nothing.
Right,
Yeah, I
All
just want to make sure.
partial nothing.
right. So now we really have to decide 0, 304, 571, or 880. Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you. So I'll go back and say I'm in full support, $880,000 of students from kindergarten through graduates of Harvard or Yale, and congratulations to one of our students who studied a lot, I guess, online, got into Yale. That's pretty impressive. Okay, so I know you're gonna keep continuing to work that way. But more importantly, I think this legislature has to send a message to every resident of Orange County and every high school student that we are 100% in favor of getting them back on track. Okay, we've talked for a couple hours here. It's 880,000 out of an $880 million budget, all right? It affects the bottom line going forward, but if you believe your projections for the next 5 years, that floor is going up no matter what. We can have this same conversation next year when we're in a little better shape, but I know you're gonna try to do everything you possibly can to increase the FTEs. And I know Ralph and Tom Waddell, you're doing a great job on that task force. It's tough times, but now is not the time to send another negative message to our kids. Our kids need to be told, we are gonna do everything we possibly can to get them the education they need. So I'll be in favor of the $880,000.
If it makes it.
Right.
So
We got it.
at this point, are you looking for someone to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm looking for maybe a couple motions
I'll
on
make-
numbers.
I'll make a motion, go ahead. You were the second.
I'll make a motion, we adopt the budget as presented.
Second. Mr. Paduk?
I'll make a motion that we keep it stable for this year.
We can't have more than one at a time. So,
So it's a yes or no vote.
right.
Still enough.
Is there a motion from E&E?
DNA, so
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
which motion? The same motion?
Same motion, so we vote on the same motion.
Yeah, I have to be clear.
Okay,
All right,
so it's a yes or no.
yes or no on the 880? Kelly, you want a roll call?
Which committee we doing?
We're doing first.
We're doing Ways and Means first.
Gresha,
No.
Cheney,
Yes.
Hines,
No.
O'Donnell,
Yes.
Duke,
No.
Hotel,
No,
Ben.
No.
5 minutes, 2 ayes, 5 minutes.
Education, economic development, roll call please.
O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ramos. Yes. Savage,
Yes.
Sutherland,
Yes.
Mineta.
No.
Right, 1 no.
Okay,
So the 880 goes.
so the 880 goes to the floor.
No, it doesn't.
Couldn't pass. There's 8 on the committee and 4 yes.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
It's 5.
Oh, needs 5.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I thought that was, I didn't hear all the no's. Can you do that again, Kelly?
Just read it back.
can you just
For,
read it back?
read it back for E&E?
Evening, we have O'Donnell's aye, Ramos aye, Miscavige aye, Sutherland aye, and Mineta was a no. And we have 3 absent.
Okay, great, so that fails.
So the chairwoman can vote on this.
She's not breaking it.
Chooses not to.
If you choose.
All right, well, I'll make the proposal then for the additional 571 to cover the cost of the contract that were settled, 571,000 and change as you calculate it as 3%.
Second.
It- well,
Uh,
571,
Yeah, let me find my page.
thank you. You
No
have it going back and forth.
No problem at all.
I thought it was 5.
Yes.
I thought it was 5.
Well, again, I was told 3%, so 3% of 19,052,000.
570?
Yeah,
571, 587.
571, 587. And that was seconded by Mr. Hines. Any other discussion? 571,
587,
$587.
and that's seconded. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a proposal from
E&E.
E&E?
Anyone?
Yeah, I'll make that.
Mr. Oskevich,
Okay, Ruskovich,
second?
second. And a second. Mr.
Mr. O'Donnell? Okay. Kelly, roll call, please.
Gresha,
Aye.
Cheney,
Yes.
Hines,
Yes.
O'Donnell,
Yes.
Duke,
No.
Hotel,
Yes,
Yes.
ayes, 1 no.
E&E?
O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ramos. Yes. Savage,
Yes.
Sutherland,
Yes.
Mineta.
Yes.
5 ayes.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Is that it for the agenda?
No, we still have, now we have the county audit, and then I have to do my meeting after this. And we got.
All right, well, the budget is done.
Early.
Thank you, everyone. All right, next we go on to the review of the Orange County audit. I believe that's what Mr. Joy was loading into the computer system so that we continue, correct?
Keeps crashing.
It keeps crashing.
So,
All right, so again, this not going to be good for the public to see the screen if they're watching on the internet. But again, gentlemen, welcome. Thank you
Yes,
for
thank you,
your time.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all.
We will refer to both the spiral book, which is the actual audit financial statement, and the pamphlet, which is information that has been extrapolated from the financial statement.
I've got
Great.
3 spiral books. Be more specific.
This is the budget,
One with
Yeah,
Lego
got
land.
that, got
Lego
that.
land.
and then this is the pamphlet.
Got that.
Okay, so
thank
those are the
you.
only two things you need to know.
Okay, 'cause there was another
and,
one here I don't know what it came from.
Obviously, you'll get a copy of the report in a form that can be digitally put on the county website for people to review.
Can we load that up there?
This is crashing.
Right. Go on. I load
Yep.
it.
We're here this evening, or this afternoon, to present the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021. And if I can direct you to the financial report, which is the spiral bound booklet with Lego land on the front.
Mhm.
And if you turn to page Roman numeral 13, XIII.
All right, and again, the public should be able to hear what we're saying now, and just not able to follow along because they can't see the video. But
So Roman numeral 13 is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting has been once again awarded to Orange County by the Government Finance Officers Association, the National Association located in Chicago, for the county's achievement in excellence in financial reporting, which there are only a number of communities, entities within the state of New York who receive this. And this is the 26th consecutive award given to your county, Orange County. And it's due to the hard work of your finance and budget people putting together the information for this financial report. And this benefits the reader insofar, especially the knowledgeable readers such as the rating agencies, financial institutions, who read your financial results and assign bond ratings to the county, which results usually in lower interest rates when the information is good and complete and transparent. So that saves taxpayers dollars. If we go 1 page, 2 pages past the Certificate of Achievement, we come to the Independent Auditors Report. And the first paragraph describes exactly what we've done on behalf of the legislature. We've audited the financial statements of government activities, business type activities, the discretely presented component units, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information for the County of Orange as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2021, and the related notes to the financial statements. Collectively, these are known as the basic financial statements. The second paragraph is most important. In our opinion, based upon our audit and the report of other auditors, we did not audit the community college. We didn't audit the Orange Water Authority. We've assigned a clean opinion to the county's financial statements in accordance with the accounting principles generally acceptable in the United States. So with that said, what we'd like to do then now is turn to the pamphlet. The handout in the pamphlet. And if we turn to page 3, cover page is page 1. Chris will begin to take you through the financial results of the general fund. Chris?
Sure. So on page 3, we set it up exactly like the financial statements. We begin with the original budget, their final budget, which after the board modifies it, their actual results in the variance of that final budget. If we go up in the first column, the original budget, you go up three numbers, you'll see in the parentheses, 18,744,000. So when you adopted your budget last year, you anticipated using 18,744,000 of your fund balance to balance the budget. 4.8 million of that was encumbrances, purchase orders that rolled over from the prior year. And then 13.8 million you used to reduce your need for taxes levied against the people, the taxpayers of the county, in order to keep your rate within the tax cap. During the course of the year, you modified it by about $1.1 million. Almost $1 million of that was for a transfer to your community development fund. And your actual results in the third column, again, if you go up three numbers, you can see that you didn't use fund balance. You actually generated $65 million in surplus, 85 million better than budget in the fourth column. On the next page, we'll describe how you did that. So page 4, we have your revenues. And again, if you go to that fourth column, the variance of the budget, you'll see that you came in about 125.7 million under your final budget. Now, I think we first have to explain the bulk of the variance with under the budget is due to grants. A lot of times you have grants that were given in prior years, you roll them forward, they modify your budget. So that was about $75 million roughly. In addition, this year you modified your budget during the year to include money for ARPA funding. You put about $37 million into a contingency account. So that's 112 million of that variance because you ended up not using any of that ARPA money. And then, of course, during the course of the year, you received additional grants from the state and federal government because they're in a different fiscal year. So I'll try to explain the variances in a little more detail on the next page. So if you slide down, your main revenue is sales tax. You can see that you came in 41.8 million over budget on sales tax. The good news is
Page 5.
Page 5, go down to the next page. You came in 41.8 million better than you anticipated. Remember when you put your budget together at the tail end of 2020, you were in the middle of the pandemic, sales tax revenue had been declining, you didn't know where you were going. You remained conservative, but again, due to the fact that the economy jump-started, however you want to phrase it, you ended up exceeding your budget by $41 million.
Chris, you know, I just want to point out to them right now, if you look at the bottom of that page, it says the distribution of the sales tax. So when you adopted the budget, you intended to share 79 million of the sales tax. And that jumped up to 91, almost $92 million as a result of the actual.
Footnote 1 on page 5.
Yeah, page 5 on the bottom. So you were able to share $12 million more with localities as a result of the strong sales tax. So that's,
That's good for everyone in the county.
Yeah.
Both towns.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly great year.
Yeah.
So the next line there is state aid. And that's for the health programs. So you can see you came in about $8.3 million under the modified budget, the final budget. Again, a lot of that is due to grants rolling forward. You came in 33.8. I'm sorry, state aid general came in under by 8.3. State aid health came in under by 33.8. Again, most of that is grant related. You had a $10 million grant for reopening schools. You had 3.5 million for public health, and you had a few $1 million rolled over from the prior year. And you underspent your programs because, again, when you put your budget together, you anticipated a lot more spending in the health area due to the pandemic that luckily you didn't need to expend. The next three categories are social service programs. If you aggregate all of them, you came in about $20 million on the budget, on the revenue. All because you didn't spend the money. Your social service programs, again, you had to fund your budget in order to meet the needs. Luckily, with unemployment and other programs, people weren't eligible, so you didn't have to expend that money. The big number is the 37 million. As I said, you did modify your budget during the year, thinking you're going to use the ARPA money for a particular program. You ended up not using it, so we didn't recognize the revenue. So that revenue is sitting on your balance sheet and unearned at this point in time.
as of the end of 21.
Everything's as of December.
Now, on that sales tax money you're talking about, is up 15%, right? In 21 it was distributed. But now in the report that Kerry gave or whoever, I'm trying to remember, we were up this year, 22, we're up over 35%, right?
We haven't,
We haven't seen 20.
we haven't seen.
We haven't seen that before, okay.
No,
All right.
the
So
sales
we're in
tax
a much
is still,
better situation this year than we were even at the end of 21, that's all I'm saying.
Right, this is historical.
right. Then the last line, major line for revenue variance is your federal transportation aid. Again, you've had about $50 million of planning grants that have been rolling forward from the federal government. The money has not been expended, therefore you haven't recognized the revenue. You also have a savings on the appropriation line. Those few items account for about 110 million of that 125 variance. So that's the bulk of that revenue. When you turn to page 6, we put in a 5-year snapshot for you. I won't go over it for expediency, but again, we put this in just so you can see how some of these revenues have changed over time. Again, if you look at your sales tax revenue, you can see it was growing up until 2019. The pandemic hit, the first quarter was very tough. It dropped to 278, but it's rebounded to 354 gross again in 2021.
And you can look at the bottom, the last number on the bottom, the distribution of sales tax for local municipalities, your towns, from 73.7 million in 2017 up to almost 92 million,
So it's been a windfall for them
almost
too.
$20 million.
A fortunate windfall, but definitely unknown and unpredictable.
We're seeing this more often. Would it be fair to correlate the new businesses that have come into Orange County as part of the sales tax increase? Or are we seeing something that's not?
I would think that is, I mean.
Oh, sure.
I'm asking them as the professional.
The commissioner might be able to give you some more information. We don't have access to it.
I understand. Thank you.
I think the initial jump was Amazon, that New York state law that allowed you to collect sales tax on items that were shipped into the county. I believe it passed sometime in 2019, just near before the pandemic. If that hadn't passed, you wouldn't be receiving the money from Amazon. So New York State finally did something.
A lot of
in time
trucks
to help.
rolling around.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of trucks.
A lot of card.
You know, this is the bottom line that helps the taxpayer in Orange County, period. So,
Right.
Yeah.
excellent.
All out-of-state sales used to be non-taxable.
Only if you had an access to the county. So if they had a shipping point here or somewhere else, you got something. But
Incidentally, just for you, if you look in the upper left-hand corner of each one of these pages, you'll see the reference to the audit report, what page that information was taken. So, on page 6, there's no reference
Because it's a five-year.
that's not in the booklet. So when you go to page 8, on expenditures, you'll see it was taken from page 94.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
again, page 7, we just try to chart out the growth so that you can see your major revenues, property tax, sales tax, and then distribution. So it just shows the vibrancy of the sales tax revenue. If we flip to page 8, now if you go again to that fourth column of variance on the appropriation side, you came in $210 million under the budget. Now, if you look at page 8 and 9, kind of in sequence, down below, we tried to indicate the grants that were rolled over from the prior year to 21. So that's where I said the 75 million came in. That's inflating your budget number. If you go up top again, you see your budget was 643, you modified it to 811. 75 million of that was just older grants. Again, 37 million was ARPA, and the balance was basically new grants that were received because the state fiscal year begins April 1st and the federal year September 1st or October 1st, I forget which. But again, if we look up at general government support, it came in 54 million under the final budget, 37 million is ARPA. The rest is spread between your all your support departments, the legislature, the executive, the finance office, purchasing, human resources. Education came in about 9.2 million under budget. And again, we all know that in the beginning of 21, a lot of schools for the special needs children were still remote. There's a lot less usage. Parents were concerned about putting their child into classrooms, so you had less usage. Public safety came in about 11 million under. A lot of that was grant money that you received. You received about 5.7 million in grants, so that explains the bulk of that variance. Health services, again, way under 37 million. You can see you modified the budget during the course of the year by about 30 million. So again, you rolled over grants. You received new grants like the one I mentioned about reopening schools. And luckily, you didn't have to spend all that money, but then again, you didn't receive the new revenue. Economic opportunities, your social service programs, we'll talk about that a little later. We have that isolated. But again, you didn't use 47 million in your social services expenditures, the bulk of which was in the Medicaid category, which is 100% local share. Then the next big one is the home and community services. Those are those transportation grants that have been rolling over for the last 10 years, and you haven't been able to spend the money. So therefore, you didn't spend it, you don't receive it. All that in together, you did 210 million better than budget. On the expense side, you came in under 125 million on the revenue side, which left you with a net surplus of $85 million. If you switch to turn to page 10.
Just, you want to, on page 9 for that? Or the next one?
So on page 9, as I've said, we added a second column here for the grant rollovers. So those grant rollovers are from the 20-year and prior. So we try to identify them to help clear up what the variances are made of.
So if you look at the middle of the page, under the final column, on page 8, you see a number 811,782,455. Everybody see that?
Yes.
And then if you look at the bottom of on page 9, the left-hand column at the bottom, you see that 811,782,455. And then what we've included is the grant rollover, and then we subtract the grant rollover out of your final budget, which gives you an operating budget of 736, of which you spent 600,000, and you had 135 of underspending without taking into consideration the grant rollover.
Right, the old grants. It
Right,
takes
the
into
old
account new grants.
Right.
So you got to separate those out.
I just got a
It's an
question.
amazing year.
On the bottom, it says unexpended contingency appropriation of 38.5. That's all the departments?
No, that's the money that you moved into contingency from ARPA.
Oh, another
Oh,
way.
from ARPA,
Right.
If you remember,
Oh, yeah, I
know,
got you.
nobody knew what to do with ARPA.
Right.
We got it.
That's right.
On the revenue side, let's just go back so you can match that number. On page 5, second column, on the final, you see it says federal aid, general ARPA, 37,378. So you put the revenue there, the 37 million, and then you budgeted in contingency that same amount of money. But because you didn't spend any of the money, you didn't move it out of contingency to spend it, the revenue did not get into your fund balance, and the contingency appropriation was not moved into line items as well. Correct?
Yes. All right, so we go to page 10. As I said, we have a little bit of a summary here for social service history. And just to show you that 2017, your local share was about 123.9 million. In 21, your local share came out to be only 101 million. So about 22.9 million less than it was 4 years ago, with the majority of that savings being on your Medicaid. And if you remember, when we did the budget review, we talked about the Federal Medicaid Assistance Program, FMAP, where the federal government was giving you a reduced Medicaid share because of the fact that people were not coming to Medicaid, they were going to the exchanges and picking up the insurance from the exchange. When they did that, they gave municipalities a reduced charge to reflect the savings at the state, and probably not dollar for dollar.
And if you look at that line in 2017, your local share was 123 million, and in 2021, 101 million. The difference being it went down by 22.9 million.
Page 11 just charts those numbers for you guys in a graphic. Sometimes people like to see the problem. You know, it's more visual sometimes with graph. On page 12, we included the balance sheet. So again, as somebody just said, it was a pretty amazing year. If you look at the first line, you see your cash position is up from 17 million in 2020 to 138 million at the end of 2021. Now, we all know that we just talked about a surplus of about 85 million, plus you got ARPA money. Let's round it off to 40 million. So $125 million of cash that came in during the course of the year. We won't go through every line, but I think the good news for you is your taxes receivable dropped. So more taxpayers were able to pay their taxes, you got more delinquencies in. So as the economy picked up, more of your taxpayers were able to pay their back taxes.
And the one thing we want to show them, Chris, is in the middle of the page, it says unearned revenues, ARPA. 45,603,748. Everyone see that number?
Mhm.
So as you use the ARPA funds as permitted and in accordance with the plan you filed with the federal government, that money becomes revenue. That's what it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
Right now,
Included in that 45.6 is some unearned revenue that's not ARPA. We highlighted because the bulk of it is ARPA.
37.
Yeah, 37 million of it is ARPA.
What are other considered unearned revenues? Interest?
No, it would be revenues where somebody paid in advance. You have some people that pay taxes in advance.
Okay.
You have some other payments where the services haven't been provided.
And then what we've done on page 13, we showed a 5-year history of your fund balance and the various categories of your fund balance, which are non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. Typically, what's looked upon is the unassigned, and you can see your unassigned has grown to $117.6 million.
Yes. Those are those individual pots you always talk about.
Those are those 5 pots. Yep. Those are those 5 pots that the fund balance goes in. The definition is, the definition is on pages 47, 48 of the spiral booklet of each of those categories. Your late night reading. We make,
Next.
page 49
Helps
is
you fall asleep.
Page 49 is your property tax limitation. As you know, the county is subject to 1.5% of the 5-year average of full valuation. On the bottom of page 49 is the footnote. And then you also have the tax levy limitation law, which are limited to 2%. I think I read an email today that said that for next year, it's going to be actually 2% because of what's happened with inflation.
Maybe the second year in a row, I think.
Yeah.
I think last year was the first time in a long time that 2% meant 2%.
2% meant 2%.
And you usually go over because you also get the assessment broken too.
Right?
And Valley View, I believe you've had a separate presentation on Valley View, but it's on page 28. Statement in that position, Valley View is part of your financial statements. And if you go to page 29 on Valley View, you'll see that Valley View had a loss of $18.7 million in the left-hand column. There's only 2 columns. Bracketed. So at some point, Valley View may, again, need subsidies. I believe the occupancy rate was around 75%.
There's 74 and down
Yeah.
to about 92.
Yeah, I'm sure you discussed with our healthcare partners a game plan when they came in and did the presentation, what management may be proposing as a game plan for Valley View.
So as live stream, I'm gonna make a shameless plug that we need more people at Valley View.
Yeah, these are occupancy limitations by, due to lack of staffing to care.
Yeah.
Jobs are available at Valley View. Apply,
There's a waiting list.
With incentives.
not for employees.
Yeah, not
And-
everybody.
We'd
What I
like
like
to resolve that waiting list.
What I also like to point out is your capital fund. On the page, special note page.
Page 108, 109.
109?
109, you're gonna have the project length schedule, beginning on page 109. All the projects that you voted on and funded. So the finance office is keeping track of all those projects.
And that's something that everyone has a separate capital fund book to review with those as well.
Right. So that's a thumbnail sketch. Obviously, the county is in terrific financial shape. At some point, you're not going to have the federal funds any longer, another 2 years. So the administration obviously has to plan for not having those funds available. To what degree you'll pull down fund balance to transition into a balance for expenses. I guess the administration will share those plans. But just be aware that the good days of the federal funds will end. Just as they will for the college, that $7 million that they're putting into their budget,
Exactly.
it's gonna hit your budget as well.
All right. Questions? I hope not.
We also included 2 slides at the end for you.
I'm sorry?
We also included 2 extra slides at the end related to the ESG. This is a new disclosure that may be required in financial statements and official statements. We just put it in for information purposes. You can read it when you want.
Great.
But it's something your finance and budget department might have to work towards in the future. So just be aware that there's additional disclosures that may be required.
And they're here, so they're advised.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what that stands for, it stands for environmental, social, and governance, which the rating
Excellent.
agencies are looking for disclosures
Mhm.
in your official statements. And drop the bottom.
All right, great. Thank you, gentlemen. Questions like I asked? Madam Chair, any
Questions of others?
question?
Good.
No?
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Looks like we're finished. Thank you very much for all of your work and all of your staff's work for countless hours, I'm sure. Motion to adjourn from Ways and Means.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn from Education Economic Development.
So moved.
Skevich and Ramos. May I have, roll call? Not roll. Excuse me. Thank you. Long day. Aye. Carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is yours for bathroom break. And
Let's take a bathroom break for, let's come back here in a few minutes. This is gonna be, we still have 2 long ones.
Thank you all for your time.
Just say what
Thank
time.
you.
Just say what time.
Let's come back at, what time is it now?
6:50.
Let's come back at 6:20.
What is it?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, everybody.
Nick?
I think it was your.
Thanks, sir.
I'm gonna give these to,
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Orange County Education Economic Development Committee meeting for, July 18th. We're running a little late. We had a long meeting on the last one.
Almost a night.
Yeah, it's a night meeting, right? So, let's see here. At this time, I would like to call the meeting of the Education Economic Development Committee to order. Please note that this meeting is being transmitted via live stream video. The public can find a link to the video by streaming and visiting Orange County website, orangecountygov.com, clicking the tab for the legislature and locating the Education Economic Development meeting on the calendar. I would ask that everyone please silence your cell phones, tablets, and other electronic devices. A note, please be mindful that the microphones in here in the statutory committee room are sensitive and robust. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kelly, can we have roll call, please?
O'Donnell?
Here.
Ramos? Here. Miscavige?
Here.
Sassy? Sierra? Spiganko? Sutherland? Here. Menuda?
Here.
President Rios?
Wonderful. First up on the agenda is Bill Fialvaranti, CEO of the Orange County Industrial Development Agency, for a monthly update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks very much. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Joyce from Cornell Cooperative Extension. She let me jump in front of her, probably not realizing how epic this meeting would be. But I threatened to make an express report every month. I don't do it. I'm going to do it this month. But I don't need to diminish the importance of this. But I'm in front of you every month. I'll answer any questions you have, whatever else you need.
Stopwatch is starting now.
Here we go. Last month, I summarized the projects that we've approved to date. So you know what we've done. This month, I've just talked about what's current in the hopper for us. Royal Wine, wine and grape juice manufacturer looking to come to Goshen. We have a public hearing for them tomorrow at 11 a.m. at Village Hall in Goshen. So if anyone wants to attend in person, you can also, of course, watch the live stream or be a part of the Zoom. Let me know if you're interested in that. That's tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mount St. Mary College, that's on the other side of the house, our Orange County Funding Corporation. They are pursuing tax-free revenue bonds, excuse me, through OCFC. And we're going through that process. It's not exactly a fast process, but that is moving along. The accelerators, very quickly, we're closing them down. By attrition, as I've been saying, as our leases run out, we're out of Newburgh, we're out of Highlands Falls, we're now out of New Windsor. Our last lease expired there June 30th. So we're out. We've moved everyone out. We've relocated people if we needed some extra help. It's also going above and beyond on that. Middletown Accelerator, our lease expires there around Thanksgiving. We're out as well. We've sent a letter to all the clients saying, just so you know, we're not renewing our lease. You need to be out at this point, much more kindly than that, but letting them know. We had a scenario in New Windsor where some people left belongings. They kind of delayed with that, and it jeopardized our relationship with the town and our agreement with the town. So we're trying to safeguard against that. Finance, just wanted to mention that we have been working with a CPA, a local CPA RBT, who's been really helping us uncoil some of the systems that were put in place, quite frankly, to mask decision-making and oversight and spending. We've certainly changed that. Everything is geared towards full transparency. They've helped us a lot with that, help us uncoil those things as well, put in new policies and procedures to safeguard the organization. And they're helping us right now put together an RFP for our 2022 audit. We've had the same firm doing that for many years. I believe it's time. We're really trying to reprocure all of our services. And that is one, RBT is helping us put that together.
That's tremendous news. Thank you.
Thanks. Active RFPs, local labor monitoring. I reported on this, but we have 5 finalists. I'm interviewing them all now. I'll be bringing it to our governance committee meeting to talk about selecting one of those firms. That's the process we've been using. Bond counsel, we went through governance on that at our last meeting. The board selected 3 finalist firms for consideration, and I've interviewed all of those 3 and will be making a recommendation for the final selection to governance on the 2nd of August. Also marketing and PR. I think I touched on this before, but we want to not only market our services, our incentive programs and such, but we want to help educate the public. It's a bit of a PR side of it, helping to separate truths from myths around IDAs and pilots specifically in our IDA. I'm also looking to work with our regional IDAs. We've been meeting regularly, Dutchess County, Westchester, Ulster, et cetera, around the Mid-Hudson region. I proposed to them the idea of doing some joint marketing or joint education in that regard to, again, educate the public about the truth versus the myths in the work that we do, because there's a lot of misunderstanding there. So that RFP will be going out at the end of this month. Shovel ready, as I mentioned, we received 5 proposals. I'm interviewing them. We'll make a recommendation to governance. Our meeting schedule, please always want to make sure you have this. I believe Kelly, Gina, have a full copy of our 2022-23 calendar. If you ever want that, you should have it. I think I have an updated, Kelly, so I'll send you an updated version of that. But certainly the meetings are always downstairs in the community room, typically at 5:30 p.m. The board meetings are always the third Wednesday. We encourage you to come be a part of it, ask questions. We appreciate when you have come, and we want to make it as easy as possible for you. So those are those dates. And just other meetings. I mentioned a regional IDA meeting. We hosted one this past month or in June at the New Windsor location. I presented along with Steve Gross, had him come along to NICECAR, which is local association of commercial realtors, very important relationships for us. And he's doing a great job, as I've mentioned, really enjoying collaborating with him. And he's being very well received out there. Welcome Rotary presenting to them tomorrow morning, making a real circuit of Rotaries and other service clubs just to get the word out and kind of reintroducing the IDA to folks. And of course, I'm consistently on the radio at various stations and looking to do more of that. Lastly, I just will just add, we're 2 board members short. I know that the legislature is working on that. You've been wonderful about that. I'm sorry you went through a lot of work and now you're back at it. I'm going to do a little bit more work to try and help drum up some prospects, perhaps to be able to suggest. And obviously, it's your decision. You're driving that, but I'd like to assist if we could by helping to see if we can get some prospective candidates for you to consider. That's my express report for today.
Thank you, sir. That was amazing.
I'm impressed myself.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, I thank you very much.
Thanks very much. See you next month.
Thanks, Bill.
Next up, we have Lucy Joyce, Executive Director for the Cornell Cooperative Extension, with an update. CCD. How
Hi
are you?
there,
Welcome.
Chairman Ramirez, members of the E&E Committee. Chairman Benelli, thank you for having us today. I brought with me also Susie McCormack, who is our Family Consumer Sciences and 4-H issue leader. And so she's like Mary Ulrich's counterpart, who you know because of ice cream, right? But hopefully more than ice cream, but yes, so hope you were able to enjoy that. You what?
Still ice cream.
It is still ice cream.
Almost.
Yes. I want to go out for more, and my husband's like, calories. So anyway, I briefly want to go over a few items, cutting it down, and I wanted Susie to be able to talk a little bit about our youth programming, especially in light of the pandemic and how we're doing it. We have a 1-minute YouTube video at the end that I think you'll really like. So Orange County Ag and Family Festival, be there or be square. You should have all received a postcard in your mailbox. Please share it. Please come. I think you'll really enjoy it. We are installing a rainwater harvesting system. Let me back up a second. All of our programs are going to be showcased over the course of that weekend. So it's a great opportunity to kind of see educators are going to actually be teaching in workshop settings and things. So it'll be nice. We are installing in August a 70,000 gallon rainwater harvester collection system. The water lines are in. Still have to do the collection lines. We have to put a little pause now because we're getting ready for the festival and can't have big pits. That will be the cistern, a rain garden, and rain barrels. So whether you're a commercial homeowner or a tenant, you would be able to learn what you might be able to do for your stormwater and water your garden. And the water will be used for irrigation in general throughout the park. Our well water is very high in pH. Especially the horse arena is very well drained, gets dusty quickly. Wash and water animals and flush the toilets in the women's and men's room. So we're really excited about this project. It's funded through Environmental Facilities Corporation and the whole package actually was a donation from a major donor in the town of Warwick. So it's very exciting and a little scary, I might add. There's a barn on the property that the town has been maintaining since 2011. And it leaks pretty badly. So we have this nice 1950s barn that's not going to be around for long. And New York has a Restore New York program that was like a neon light for me in terms of, because our board was just talking about how much money you want to put in the barn. The town is responsible for it. They don't really want it anymore. So I'm looking at that program and I'm pleased to say that just today I had a conversation because of Maureen. I reached out to her and one of her staff connected me with ESD, Regional Economic Development Council staff person, and they'll help guide whether we should continue. So that's for demolition or restoration restore. That's what we'd be looking for. And then you have to repurpose it. So along with our gleaning program, where we have some Hannaford dollars to have a walk-in cooler and loading dock. We're thinking really about food processing and trusting that's also, I mean, I knew that discussion. Do you want to interrupt me and have a question?
Before you get too far
Yes.
past the bond.
Yes.
Right? So you're putting in a consolidated funding application?
Yeah, so
That's
she,
what you're talking to Maureen about?
no, Restore New York is a separate program.
Okay.
Was originally targeted for urban areas, like take the Middletown O&W Railroad,
Right,
that kind of a thing, but now they've expanded it into rural areas.
right. And did you take ownership of the bond?
We actually own it. We own it already. The town has
It was just.
irrevocable license and an easement, which means we can't take it from them, but they can give it back to us.
But you own it, okay.
But we actually own it on paper. We're all copacetic in terms of checking all the boxes. The town is interested. They're the applicant. The municipality has to be applicant. And, but they are very interested because they're looking at what, 100,000 to repair the roof. So they don't really want to do that. So anyway, and we'd have to repurpose it. It's supposed to help marginalized populations. We've been in talks with Access Supports for Living extensively. They plan on putting a garden, literally this year, a minuscule garden, baby steps before we really expand. And I thank Janet a lot for that introduction to a funder and access relationship. They're very excited about the synergies and we can use it as a workforce development, food processing center if we can. They have up to 2 million. I don't know how much they actually give us to really refurbish that. The good news about that grant is it can only be used for this kind of a purpose. So we wouldn't be taking monies away for new development. And with that, I'm going to get right into, we appreciate the office space, right? We're in the 3rd floor of the county-owned building, but I do want to share with you is not a good location for us now. There's been problems all along, appreciate the space, but increasingly, as you can imagine, with the change in county departments from Youth Bureau, Community Development, Office for the Aging to DSS Emergency Services and Probation, the clientele who come to visit county staff are highly stressed, very stressed. They're in a bad point in their life. The yelling and carrying on that goes on, you know, we used to have 4-H clubs that were homeschooled, might meet in the building. It's frequent. We're actually keeping records of how many times they're screaming, yelling, or an arrest or whatever. So the security guards are great. It's just not the environment. There are clientele. Susie provides programs that provide parenting education. So we help people get their kids back or not lose their kids. Our SNAP educators help them make their dollars go further. So we're the good guy. And when people come to our programs, they're in a much better mood. They're just really, really stressed. I just want to make you aware. I really like to move our offices out to the Education Center in 4-H Park. And I would like to, in the future, talk about potential capital funding to help augment fundraising and other kinds of grants and things. Like I'm just putting the seed there for you to think about how we might be able to work that out.
Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, and I've been wanting to talk about this a little bit more. I know we can sit down with Mr. Poor soon to have that conversation. I know our lease is up in October. We'll need to renew it. We're not moving anywhere tomorrow. It would be a big deal. And ideally you move once, right? So that's the thinking. And I don't want to take any more. So Bountiful Harvest is coming up. You had a champion cow milker last year. We're doing attorneys this year. For your information, Michelle Babcock from Jacobitz and Gubitz, Leah Fierro from Lockman and Cohen, Kevin Foley from Johnson and Foley, and Ashley Torrey, Naughton and Torrey, who used to work under Rick. So now she and Kelly have their own. And so, go ahead.
What's the date on?
Friday, September 16th. Friday this time. People seem to like the Friday. And we're really fun because we wouldn't introduce you as county legislators. But it's really, really fun. Like, you know what I mean? It's fun. It's not just program. Right? I love it. Yeah, it's fun. Janet's fun. Okay, so I want to turn it over to Susie here a little bit about our youth programming.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for the opportunity to talk. I know it's been a long day and a long meeting, so I'm gonna try to talk somewhat briefly. I just introduced myself. I'm Susan McCormick. I've worked for 25 years with a social work background with youth and families, so that is like my passion. I started with CC 5 years ago as a family and consumer sciences program leader. So I have a team of educators in that program, teach nutrition, parenting, and relatives as parents programs for kids and families. Last summer, I became the 4-H program leader as well. And so 1 year in, I thought I was just going to share 3 things with you that I've learned in 4-H in the last year. Because I think people, when I think about 4-H, they think they know what it is, especially if you're a 4-H'er or a 4-H family, but maybe some insight from someone that is new to being a staff person in the program. The first and foremost and most important thing that I really learned is that 4-H is based in research. There's been research since 2002 showing there's outcomes from the program, outcomes including, being educationally motivated, having more confidence, communicating better with peers, and more likely to make contributions in their community. So the 4-H learning model is not just about collecting facts, but it's about, working with an adult, working with your peers, working with your community, and finding a purpose in life. And so I think that's really shown in the research. The second thing that I learned in 4-H is that there's a wealth of resources available. Now, I'm not talking about some of the resources like the county does give us, money for staffing, money for program development, but I think your investment has a big return because 4-H educators have a huge network with locally, regionally, statewide, and nationally of other educators who are out there running this program. There's a huge library of curriculum. There's a lot of opportunity for 4-H youth who participate in our programs. So it's not just what we are able to run locally as well. So there's a lot of opportunity in that regard. And the third thing that I've really learned or just been brought to my attention in regards to 4-H, it's not just about young people. What we're doing is building a community. We're building a community of volunteers and parents and working with other stakeholders in the community to provide support for young people and positive youth development. I think that we all know that young people over the last few years have had a lot of, are coming back at us right now with a lot going on in their lives. There's a lot of stress and trauma. And I think because 4-H connects youth to these opportunities, to the community and to adults, we are posed to be a good program for this return. So basically 2022 has been a return for us. 2021, 2020 was very difficult, engaging youth virtually, being creative with our program, switching things up when we needed to, and it was difficult to engage youth that way. I mean, they went to school all day virtually, and then to have another virtual evening program was not really something they were keen on. In addition to that, it was hard to engage volunteers to deliver the programs. So 2022 was really about getting our feet under us again, reconnecting, and I'm just going to talk to you very briefly about some of the programs that we offered. 3 areas that we focused on in 2022 are agriculture and food systems. The other one is our STEM programming, and the third one is civic engagement. So with agriculture and food systems, we ran programs to do with a variety of animals. I have 7 different animals down here that I was going to list out, but I'll just let that go. But our hands-on experiential learning that is led by volunteers to really help young people understand the entire food system, starting from whether you're growing something or raising the animal through to how does it get into a shop and what do we do with it.
Are they doing practical application with that?
They're learning, so are they doing practical application of that? How would you answer that?
Yeah, so we have a Dairy Explorers program, for example, because there's fewer dairy farms and fewer kids on 4-H in it. So we a Dairy Explorer program where they go out to a dairy farm and learn how to learn about and work with the calf. So yes, hands-on, grooming, trying to lead the calf.
Thank you.
That was one example.
Fair enough. I'm sorry. Please continue.
No, that's okay. Absolutely. Questions are welcomed. In our STEM area, so I think STEM has become a real strength for us. We have had a lot of support from Cornell University in regards to funding of our STEM educator. They continue to fund her 1 day a week. And we are able to tap into so much that is being done both at Cornell and nationally. With our STEM program, we have a computer science club, we have a robotics club, we have a robotics competitive team, we have things like engineering challenges. We just got a small grant from Orange and Rockland to buy drones, so we're incorporating some new and fun learning opportunities with that. So I would definitely say that STEM is an area for us that is growing and is quite strong. And the third area is our civic engagement and leadership, which I think is what the intentionality of that within 4-H is what potentially sets 4-H apart from a lot of other youth programming. We have a team leadership, a career development group, we have team leader retreats, and one of our signature things is actually public presentations. So with public presentations, this is where we get a lot of 4-H alumni come back to us and say, this has helped me with my career and in everyday life. And so we want to show you today just an example of public presentations of a young person doing that. And I just have a little bit of an impact statement that I'll hand out on, when we're leaving, just showing the impact of that, so.
Thank you.
And the video is just 1 minute. I think that he heard me say that and it seemed like he was moving and shaking. I don't know if we have sound.
No sound. Joe? No sound.
Oh, yeah, no, no sound. So this thing is in the other room, huh?
What's that?
Is in another room.
Oz?
Oz. This place is, there's lots of infrastructure here. Is the TV itself?
Thank
Probably.
Says it's 62.
All right, so while he's doing that, anything else you want to add?
I mean, I just want to add that next year is our 100th anniversary of 4-H. So we are planning some celebratory things around that. And we also are looking at the future of 4-H. What niche do we fit in Orange County? What are the needs? And we have some thoughts about doing more career development and potentially food systems. But we also are going to have a bit of a visioning session to really get input from our parents, youth, and volunteers.
Okay. Thank you.
And if the video doesn't work, we can certainly send the link.
I do have it.
Okay.
I do have it. That was sent me yesterday.
No, that's great. So presentation, teaching our youth, and I heard you say volunteerism as well.
That's right, yes. And so that's actually, that was another thing that I wanted to add on our going forward is that we need to really work at re-engaging our volunteers. We have a lot of opportunity to train volunteers. So I think that's something that's super attractive, but we all know that, a lot of parents will really pay for time. So we're trying to figure that out. How to
Right, volunteerism across the board is very, very difficult. You're engaging that, hopefully.
Well, we felt it too.
Tremendous.
And invested in platform volunteer matters that we hope will also help make it easier for people to sign up to be a volunteer, what training programs they need, and record their hours. We know the Master Gardener program, which is highly structured, is embracing it completely, but our more casual volunteers maybe a little less so. So they might little staff help.
Does anyone have any questions? No.
Okay.
No luck, Joe?
Give me 15 seconds.
No, 15 seconds. There we go.
Do you have another?
Sure, I have a bunch, yeah.
Oh, they're all the same.
Yeah, they're all the
Oh,
same.
oh, okay.
Okay.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
I can add that we had so if, for this year thus far, we've had 186 kids who are enrolled as 4-Hers, but we do reach a lot more youth than that. We have 1,500 kids participating in in a sunflower growing competition. We go into schools and teach incubation and embryology, and those, they don't necessarily get registered as 4-Hers. So there's thousands of other children who are, taking some advantage from our programming.
How do you compete on growing sunflowers?
They are judged by the size. There's a few different categories. So the size of the flower itself, and then also the height of the.
Okay, hopefully I have good stuff to start with.
We actually gave them all the seeds, so we tried to, make
I have some
it,
really
yeah.
good ones at my house, that's why I asked.
Yeah, and the master gardeners gave some tips on how to grow sunflowers, and we did it last year as well, and it was really cute that, at the end of the summer, to get the pictures back of the kids over there.
Very cool.
So
Sir,
I can play it here and they'll at least see it and you can hear it.
let's do it, yeah. Wait, hit a button. Thank you for that. Thank you, Joe. Thank you all very much. Anything else?
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
No,
Thank
it's
you.
really
Thank you.
great.
Thank you for hanging around.
Yes, yes.
So
So
much.
with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Sutherland,
I'll second.
thank you.